Good morning to everybody. Um, First of all, I want to say thank you for being with us. My name is Manny Ixlawak, and I'll be doing this presentation about chlorination. So let's begin. Here you can see all of our products that we have. We have chlorination systems. We have systems that also do pH and chlorine tests. So that way we keep our pool not only with a certain amount of chlorine, but also a balanced pH. Then we also have UV systems and ozone, which we'll be talking about at the end of this presentation. So first of all, I want to tell you who we are. So we are a company called Hayward, or named Hayward. It was founded in 1925 by Mr. Irvin Hayward. Then in 1964, it was purchased and owned by the Davis family. In 2017, this was sold to a private equity consortium. We have 10 manufacturing places, and distribution centers, more than 2,500 employees, sales all over 100 countries. And as you can see, we have companies in or centers in the US, also in Australia, China, and also in Europe. So today we'll be talking about sanitation, cell chlorinators, UV and ozone, April 2nd. We will be doing more webinars next week on automation and automatic cleaners. So please follow your emails, watch your emails so you can subscribe or register for these next webinars. We'll be having more after this. So sit tight, and we'll be talking about commercial products. We'll be talking about other more things that we have in mind, and then after that we'll probably be going on through this same schedule one more time so we can have this set up. So just watch for your emails and just subscribe or register, please. So summary of topics. First of all, let's talk about electrolysis, and then after that we'll talk about water chemistry and then products. Electrolysis. What is electrolysis? Well, simply, electrolysis means that we're converting salt into chlorine. How do we do this? We just have to add chlorine and salt to the pool, and then this chlorinators will convert the salt into chlorine, will separate the molecules. As we know, salt is made by chlorine, and that's the way that it's going to be happening. And how does this happen? Well, simply we're going to add salt to the water, and after we mix the salt into the water, there are some plates inside of the chlorinator cell that have a negative and positive sides because they use electrolysis and they use electricity, DC voltage, to separate these molecules. So at this point, we can see that on one side where we have the positive side, calcium will be part of the accumulation or be accumulated. But this is part of it because on the negative side is where we're going to be separating the molecules of the salt. As you can see in this picture, it becomes very negative. It becomes a it has a pH very low, and that breaks up the molecules, producing chlorine. Now these chlorinators, or these cells, have a 180-minute polarity reverse. So in other words, every single 3 hours, the polarity reverses, which causes the positive side, which became dirty with calcium, to become negative, and then that way these chlorinators will clean up themselves. So they are self-cleaning cells or plates because of the polarity change. So now let's talk about chemistry and salt. First of all, a lot of people ask, if you have a chlorinator pool, since it uses salt, Does that mean that the salt is going to be very salty like ocean water, which is not? Here we can see the parts per million. Ocean water, it's way higher, 35,000 plus, compared to a chlorinator pool, which only requires about 2,500 to 3,400 maximum. So you will not be able to taste the salt in the water with your mouth, because it has very little amount of salt as we compare this to levels of human taste, or contact lenses, the liquid that we have on them, or simply a tear. It's going to be less salty. If we have a new pool, this is what we need for initiation and verification. We need to make sure that the pool is clean and balanced and the chemicals are balanced. Then we need to check our salt level. We need to make sure that we are around 3,000 or 3,200. And we also need to make sure that we have stabilizer in the pool, a maximum of 50. We'll talk about chemicals in just 1 second in the next slide. Stabilizer is very important, because if we don't have stabilizer, then our chlorine levels or our chlorine production will evaporate quickly. On existing pools, we need to make sure that we have some kind of metal remover. After time, there are going to be metals inside of the pool. Same thing, check the salt level. Before we add salt to the pool, we need to make sure what we have. After time, pools will accumulate salt that come from the wind, come from the sweat of a human, and come from other places also. And then also check our stabilizer level to make sure that we are in range. After we have this installed, we just got to turn on the equipment, and at the first time, the equipment will show 2,800 parts per million. Just give it 24 hours so it can stabilize itself and give you a good salt reading, or the accurate salt reading. And then after that, just set the production rate to 60%, and check it every 2 to 3 days to make sure that if it's producing too much chlorine, you can bring the production rate down, or if it's the opposite, then bring the production rate up. Here we can see the table of all the chemicals or the chemistry that we recommend. So for salt levels on residential pools, we need about 2,700 to 3,400. If it's not in that range, if it's below, it will give you a very low salt alarm. And then if it's high, it will give you a high salt alarm. Free chlorine, we want to make sure we keep it between 1 and 3.0. If it's below, then our pools can get green, will be not healthy. And if it's above, then it could produce some kind of irritation in our skin because of too much chlorine. So let's keep it in between that range. pH, same thing, 7.2 to 7.6. Below that, it will corrode anything that is metal. If it's above, we can cause two things, either calcium deposits or irritation in our skin also. Stabilizer, we need to keep that between 20 and 50. If it's below that, chlorine will evaporate fast. And if it's above that, chlorine will be blocked. The stabilizer will cause a lock, causing the chlorine not to do any work. So let's keep it between that range. Alkalinity between 80 and 120. If we don't have it between that range, then our pH will be unstable. So that's very important too. And then calcium between 200 and 400. If it's below 200, the water will be corrosive. It will cause some kind of damages to our finish of the pool. So we need to have at least 200. And if it's above 400, then calcium buildups will be a lot quicker. It will be easier. You will see corrosion, not corrosion, I'm sorry, calcium buildup a lot quicker around the pool when you have too much calcium. And metals, try to keep them at the minimum. If 0, that's perfect. Otherwise, we'll have some kind of stains. As we know, there's two things that will affect our chlorine efficiency. And one of them is a high pH. So we need to make sure that that's stable. And another thing that is not here, but I want to say it, will be high temperature. When the temperatures are high, we're talking about, for example, spas, our chlorine efficiency will be less because of the high temperature of the water. So those are the two things that will affect our chlorine efficiency. Here we can compare several chlorine types and their concentration. As you can see, chlorinators, salt chlorinators produce 100% sodium hypochlorite. When liquid chlorine, it's only 10% sodium hypochlorite. For example, the liquid chlorine tends to raise our pH. Same thing with the alkalinity and the TDS, which is total dissolvents. If we talk about large or small taps, even granular chlorine, which we call trichlor, then this chemical will tend to bring our pH down. Same thing with the alkalinity, but it will still raise our TDS and it will raise our stabilizer. Calcium hypochlorite, granular stabilizer chlorine. That will bring our pH up. Same thing with the alkalinity, same thing with the TDS. And also it will bring our calcium level higher. So that will be one of the things that this chemical does affect our water. It will add calcium to our pool. And then if we talk about dichlor, dichlor will tend to bring our pH down, our TDS up. It will not affect our alkalinity, and it will bring up our stabilizer. And then bromine, which is mainly made for spas, that tends to bring our pH down, our alkalinity down, and our TDS high. What types of salt we need to use for a pool? Simply salt that is 99% pure. Honestly, you can find this kind of salt anywhere where they sell pool equipment, and it's salt made already for pools, so there's not much there to say. Just if you do use that, that's perfect. If you don't, you need to make sure that it's 99% pure. And we recommend not to use the big one, the one that has like little rocks of salt, since it's a little bit hard to dissolve in the water. So the finer it is, the easier it's going to be to dissolve in the water. Here we can see a nitrate table for salt. You can find this in the installation manual. Otherwise, you will receive this kind of this information by email by next week. And here you can see that table, depending on how much salt we have and how big the pool is. This will tell you how much salt to add. We recommend that you don't add exactly what you see here. Add a little bit less, and then after that, check your pool. And if your pool salt level is a little bit low, then you can add more. We just don't want to go above the maximum, because if you do, then you're going to have to drain the water so you can add fresh water so you can dissolve this amount of salt that you have in your pool. So just keep that in mind. And then here we see the stabilizer adding table also. Same thing, try to add a little bit less, check it. If you need more, then you can add more to it. Test methods. We have here several test methods. We have the on number 3, we have a digital one that'll be recommended for people that have a lot of pools that have chlorinators. That will save you a lot of time. In 3 seconds, you can get a salt reading. The other ones will take more than 10 minutes. Number 2, it's a little bit of outdated, a little bit of hard work, and it's not 100% secure. So we will recommend, if you don't have that many pools, to use number 1. Just make sure that you keep this little tube or this little container in a fresh place out of the heat. And then whenever you pull one of the strips, make sure you close it right away so you can keep them fresh. Remember that these strips will expire after 3 or 4 or maybe 6 months. So try to keep them cool and try to use them quick also. So let's talk about the benefits that we have with this, with having a chlorinator. There's a lot of benefits to this. First of all, you're going to be avoiding spikes in the chemistry of the water. Okay, so every single time, for example, like for places where like they go once a week, you have to add enough chemicals for the pool to be chemically balanced for about a week. So when you add so much chemical to the water of the pool at once, you're creating spikes. By creating spikes, that means that the water is going to be, or it's going to get older after a little bit of time. So for that point, if we have a chlorinator, which keeps the chlorine level stable pretty much all the time, that's going to guarantee that our water is going to last a lot longer. What do I mean by lasting longer? The water, no matter what, after several years, becomes old water, becomes water that has germs that after time the chlorine cannot kill, and it's not going to be good for our bodies, for example. So when we have a pool that is chemically balanced 24/7, we're guaranteeing the life of the water. Also, what we save money on chemicals. We're not going to have to be buying chlorine every single week because the chlorinator will keep that chlorine level good for you. Water hardness, if we talk about calcium hypochlorite, well, we know that we are adding about 40%, maybe 35% of calcium into the water, not only just chlorine. So that's going to make our water hard after time. And that will create calcium buildups around the pool surface, especially above the water line. And then we're not going to have to be storing any more chlorine in our houses in this case, because the chlorine generator will make it for you. And one more thing, very important, this kind of chlorination does not irritate your skin, does not irritate your eyes, and does not smell like regular chlorine when we add it. So those are the benefits for this chlorinators. Let's talk about products. Products, we have several products in the market. Here you can see them in the picture. We have the AquaRite 900, AquaRite conventional, and then we have the BlueEssence. Okay, and then the bottom we have AQR-PRO and AquaRite 100. We'll talk about those in a second. Let's talk about the first three ones on top. What is the difference between these three chlorinators? Well, AquaRite, which is the one in the center, that has been out on the market for several years. Okay, so Hayward created this AquaRite 900, which is a product very similar, but with a chlorinator cell that lasts about 25% more. So it will last you longer. We know that chlorinator cells have a life expectancy just like a light bulb. So after that, they have to be replaced. Well, the AquaRite 900 has a cell that lasts about 25% more than a regular AquaRite. For the same price, you're getting a better product. This AquaRite 900 it's not being sold on the internet. That's only through distribution or dealers. So that's a good thing for everybody in our countries. Now, BlueEssence on the right side, it's going to be the same thing as an AquaRite, different label, but it's going to have a better price. I'm thinking it's probably around 30% cheaper. So it's a really good product, just like a regular AquaRite, but at a better price. So let's talk about the BlueEssence just for a little bit. We have two different models. BlueEssence 20, which is made for pools up to 20,000 gallons. It produces 0.76 pounds of chlorine in 24 hours. 345 grams of chlorine. And then we have the BlueEssence 35, which is made for pools up to 40,000 gallons. It produces 1.45 pounds of chlorine, or 658 grams. It is the same thing as an AquaRite, 12240 volts, 56 hertz. Diagnostic screen. We have the control box panel made out of metal, and then easy to use interface. We can do multiple installations if we want to, and then it can be compatible with automation by Hayward. AquaRite 900. We have two different models, one for a 25,000 gallon pool, and then another one for a 40,000 gallon pool. As you can see here, pretty much the specifications of the panel are the same screen, same metal panel. Also, you can put it with or install it with automation by Hayward. But the only difference that we see here is that the Chlorinator cell itself has a 25% extended life. Okay, this product is not sold online, so that's a good thing for distributors and dealers. If we have to replace one of these Chlorinator cells, we can do them. We can place any cell in every one of our systems. It doesn't have to be a specific cell for an AquaRite 900 or for a BlueEssence. Here we can see the reference. All we got to do is program the panel for the correct cell, and you will see that in a little bit. Let's talk about operation. Well, first of all, in the screen, you will see at the beginning what we call the average salt level. Okay, there's a little button that will make you, or that will jump between diagnostics. If you ever have a problem with the chlorinator, this will be really important to know so we can determine what the issue is at. Now, for example, if you press the diagnostic button once, it will jump to what you see number 1 on the screen, which in this case will give you a 73. 73 is the temperature of the water in Fahrenheit. If we want to change this to Celsius, there is a toggle switch, as you can see here. Now let me talk about the toggle switch so we can get rid of this. It's got 3 options. It's got the off button, which means the system is off. Automatic, which means that it respects the production, and the production of chlorine goes by this little wheel or knob. So depending on where you have this will be the production of the chlorine. Now, what do I mean by production? That means that since the chlorinator changes polarity every single 3 hours, for example, if we put it at 50%, the first hour and a half of those 3 hours will be producing chlorine, and then the second part of it, which is the other second hour and a half, it will be resting or will be off. Okay, so that's what the auto part of it means, that it will respect that part. And then we have a super chlorinate, which is the bottom part, as you can see here. This means that if you put it on that part, it will produce 100% chlorine no matter what for the next 24 hours. This is like doing a small shock to your pool. This is perfect whenever you have a little party and the water got a little bit cloudy. Then you can do this. Just leave your pump on during the night, we can say, and during 24 hours, it will produce chlorine nonstop. And then after that, it would go to its regular production, which goes by the knob that I just showed you right here. Okay, so going back to the diagnostics, that's the first thing. So what I try to say with that knob is that if you want to change it from Fahrenheit to Celsius, all you got to do is whenever you see that on the screen, bring the auto button up to superchlorinate and then back to auto, and that reading will change to Celsius instead of Fahrenheit. Okay, so now if we press the diagnosis button one more time, it will jump to this number, which is number 2, which in this case is 23.5. This number, it's actually the voltage that is going to the cell. Voltage DC, it has to be between 22 and 32 volts DC. If it's not in that range, then we can determine if we have an issue either with the board or the chlorinator cell. Most likely, if it's below 22, we have an issue with the board, then we can check what's going on. And if it's above 32, we have a problem with the cell itself. Maybe it needs to be replaced because it got to the end of its life. Then if we press Diagnostics button one more time, we'll go to number 3. In this case, it's 5.2. That's going to be the amperage. The amperage is going to vary depending on what cell we have in the plumbing. Depending on the time, on the size of the cell, it's going to depend how many amps it pulls. For example, for any one of the our type of cells, you can actually see them down here. A T15 is for a pool up to 40,000 gallons, and then a T3 is for a pool up to 15,000. So the bigger the cell, the more amperage it's going to pull. Then we press Diagnostic buttons one more time. In this case, number 4. We're going to see a number followed by a P, the letter P. This means production. That will be related to where we have the knob. Okay, so then if we press Diagnostics button one more time, we'll get into number 5, which is going to show a number with a negative number or negative sign at the beginning. So it'll be a negative number. This is the salt reading that the chlorinator cell, it's reading exactly at this point where the water is flowing. Okay, this system will take the reading from last night plus the new reading, and then it will do an average. That's why the main screen on top here shows the average salt level. That's the way it works. Takes the reading from the night before plus the one from today, and then it gets an average. And then number 6, we'll see a ALO or AL0. This number will change up to 5. That's for programming. And honestly, at this point, just keep it to AL0 because before it used to communicate with automation systems made by the competition. Nowadays, it doesn't, so just keep it at that number and we'll be okay. And then if we press Diagnostics button one more time, we'll see a number with an R. The R means revision. That's the software of the system at this point. That hasn't changed, so we don't have to worry about that. And then last, we'll see something like T15. That's where we need to program the chlorinator cell. Depending on what we have in the plumbing, we need to change that so it's the same. So if we have a T3 in the plumbing, we gotta change this to T3 instead of T15, or the same thing as T9. Keep in mind that a T15 will be the same thing as a AquaRite 940 or a BlueEssence 35. And then the T9 will be the same thing as an AquaRite 925. And then the T5 will be the same thing as a BlueEssence 20. So again, T5, same thing as BlueEssence 20. T9, same thing as an AquaRite 925. And the T15 will be the same thing as an AquaRite 940 or a BlueEssence 35. In order to change this, all we gotta do is simply, when we see that on the screen, move the little switch from auto to super chlorinate and back to auto, and it will be changing. So keep that in mind so we can know that, so we know that everything's programmed correctly. Every single one of these systems that I've been talking about, BlueEssence, AquaRite 900, or the conventional AquaRite, has the same little LEDs that indicate any issue that we have with the system, or simply that everything's perfect. The first 4 lights that we see on the top are green. First one means power. Everybody understands we have power, it's energized, breaker is on. And then the second one, it's generating. Whenever the chlorine cell is generating chlorine, this light will be on. If we put it to super chlorinate, we'll see that third light on, that third green line. third green one, and then last on the green ones, if this is connected to automation, we will have a light that is on saying remotely control. That means that automation like OmniHub or OmniLogic will be controlling the chlorinator. For the lights that are on the bottom, we have the first one, flow or no flow. This light has two functions. Whenever you turn it on, this light will be flashing for about a minute. That's because it's trying to reach or trying to read the temperature of the water, so that's totally normal. After a minute, it's going to go off. If the light is solid red, that means that we have no flow. So in that case, we got to check that our pump is on, it's got a full prime, filter is not dirty, maybe a valve in the wrong position, or otherwise we can check the sensor to make sure that it's not broken, the sensor, the flow sensor for the chlorinator, or maybe the connection on the panel could be loose or maybe corroded. So we can check those things with this kind of diagnostic. If we have a check salt, that means that the check salt also has two functions. If it's flashing, that means that we are low on salt, but still working, so it's time to add salt. And if it's solid red, that means that we are definitely below the minimum and we need to add salt before this system works. When it's flashing, it will still be producing chlorine. When it's solid, it will not be producing chlorine because there's not enough salt. So it's a matter of adding salt, and we should be done with that. And then we have the high salt, which is understandable. That means that we are above the maximum. Now, let me give you a little tip here. Before we add salt, or before we drain the pool because we had too much salt, I'm going to recommend that we put or we test the water with some secondary method, like a little salt strip, just to make sure the system is in the correct part of the salt level, just for giggles. Okay, so every single 3 months or every single 6 months, we should be doing a little test on the side so we know that the system is working or is actually accurate. And then we have inspect cell. We have two functions with this little light. If it's flashing, that's normal. It will appear every single 3 months, or actually every 500 hours of working. That's just to tell you that it's time to inspect the cell. Take a look. If it's dirty, clean it. If it's not, don't clean it. Just put it back in the plumbing. And then to reset the light, we just got to press the diagnostics button that you see here next to the screen for 3 seconds, and then that will disappear, and it will come back on after another 500 hours of work time. If it's solid, then we definitely have an issue, and most likely the cell, it's going to be dirty. Either that or the cell has come to the end of its life. So when you see it solid, definitely check your salt level, make sure that everything's perfect, and then after that, inspect the cell and clean it if necessary. If we want to connect this to a automation, to an OmniHub, we can do that now. We're just going to have to require this little board. As you can see on the top, this little board will be the communication between our salt chlorinator and our automation, either OmniHub or OmniLogic. This little board has two little connectors with 4 wires. The one on the bottom is going to be connected to the board itself. As you can see here, the board has a plug for that. And then the top one will go to our automation system. That way we can control everything through automation. Through our cell phone, we can see the salt level, we can raise the production, or we can see if we have a little issue with the system too. So we can see that everything from even a cell phone. For installation, if we talk about plumbing, we want to make sure a couple things here, that the chlorinator cell is the last thing in line. We don't want free chlorine flowing through our heater, for example. So it needs to be almost at the return line going to the pool. And then we recommend we have a check valve. This check valve to provide blockage so the chlorine level, when the pump shuts off, does not back up into our heater, accumulate in the heat exchanger, and damage the heat exchanger. So check valve will be recommended. Also, the cell has a minimum gallons per minute, which is 11. So just keep those things in mind for a good plumbing installation. And here you can see one more installation with multiple units. In this case, we have several heaters. I just want to say that if we have several chlorinators, we would have to do the same thing, a parallel installation. But in this graphic, I just want to show you that the chlorinator is going to be the last thing in line with the check valve. And then also we recommend, especially if you have variable speed pumps, to have the chlorinator cell upside down. That way we can prevent air gaps inside of the chlorinator cell when we have a little bit of flow, in case we have an issue with the air suction somewhere in the equipment. Here you can see another installations. What we don't recommend is number 4. The easiest way is just to keep the chlorinator cell and the flow sensor together when you do the installation. Let's talk a little bit about AquaRite-PRO. The AquaRite-PRO is pretty much the same thing as an AquaRite, but the only thing that this system has that regular AquaRite or BlueEssence or AquaRite 900 doesn't have is that this one will control your pH and will control your chlorine level through a sensor, as you can see here on the left side, which is a sensor for ORP. So this system is like having a pool guy pretty much checking your water and adding whatever chemical you need to keep your water chemistry balanced 24/7. Now here you can see the specifications, also 120 for 240 connection. Different types of cells that you can put into this system. It goes up to 40,000 gallons, metal case. So we have no issues with that. And also it can be connected to automation. 4 little buttons, simply to turn on the power of the system or turn it on. Super chlorinate, read all the diagnostics with that I button, and then settings and configuration, where you can set up what pH level you want and at the same time what chlorine level you want through ORP. For this system, you can add any of these items. For example, an acid tank, or if you want to control your pH through CO, you can put a CO2 kit. We also have a dummy cell, electrical kit, cell cleaning base, and obviously the sensor kit that you see on the top left. All of the AquaRites, including the AquaRite-PRO, have this kind of installation, 120 or 240. From the factory, they come at 240. So you can see here in the middle that we have we have here a kind of bypass or a jumper. So in case of connection of 120, there's actually 2 of them. They will have to be removed and then put one on the top and then one on the bottom. For 120, the top part is 110. For the bottom will be the neutral wire. Make sure when you do this connection, the chlorinator can be connected on the outside of the time clock or the output. So when the pump comes on, in case of single speed pumps, the chlorinator will be on. We can do that, but what I do want to mention here is that every single one of our systems besides ground, it needs to be bonded. So you can see here that we have a bonding wire on the bottom of this picture. And then on the next one that I just show you, we also have that bonding wire. That is for safety. So keep that in mind, please. Grounded and bonded. We can see here a connection for 120 that also has ground, which is the green wire, and then also has bond. Let's talk a little bit about AquaRite 100. This is a new product. This system came for pools up to 30,000 gallons or 87,000 liters size-wise. It produces 1.2 pounds of chlorine, free chlorine, in a period of 24 hours or 544 grams. This system, besides that, is plastic, so that's good for salty areas. And then also it can work in between a bigger range of salt. So it can go down to 1500 parts per million and still work, or up to 4500 parts per million. This chlorinator is ideal for fiberglass pools or vinyl pools, and also for small pools, concrete. Very simple to use. It has no screen, no diagnostics. It's just a matter of just LEDs. And the chlorinator cell, as you can see here, it's a good replacement, a lot cheaper than the competition. So there's no computer on top. It's just a cell. So whenever it dies in the future, it is going to be a lot cheaper to replace. That cell also has a sensor here that detects the salt level, the temperature of the water, and then it's got a flow switch on the left side. The little body of the cell, it's see-through. That way we can see when the cell is dirty without having to pull it apart. And it's a very simple installation. Let's talk about that. All we got to do is simply mount the controller in the wall, 2 screws on top, maybe 1 on the bottom or 2 on the bottom to hold it in place. You plug it into the wall or into a breaker, and then you do a little bit of plumbing. You plug the cable or the connection up the cell, and you're good to go. Very simple unit, very simple to install. If we got to do a 120 volt connection, in that case, that system comes with 5 wires. The green one we know that is ground, and then we use the white one, which is neutral, with the red one, and we attach it to the neutral. And on the high side, or on the hot side, we use the 2 dark wires, which are the black and the purple. That will be a connection for 120. If we do 240, then we use the black for 120, and we use the red for 120. The ground green, that's ground, and then the purple and the white ones, we just wire nut them, and we're good to go. Very simple connection. System has several LEDs and 3 buttons on the bottom. The 3 buttons means minus and plus. That will raise or decrease our temperature production. Every single LED you see here, from minimum to maximum, that's the production rate. It will go in increments of 10%. So we'll start with 10, 20, all the way to 100% production. And then we have a button that is super chlorinate, which means we're going to do a shock to the pool. The LEDs on top means super chlorinate. Whenever we do a super chlorination, that LED will be on. If the system is producing chlorine, we will have it generating chlorine light on. And then if it's not, we'll have the standby LED on. If there's a problem with the system, then this light will be on saying there's a problem, and that'll be related to one of the LEDs, and we'll see it in just a second. And then the bottom, we have 2 more LEDs. One of them will be for the life expectancy of the cell that is coming to an end, and the bottom one will be whenever we have a problem with flow. In diagnostics, we're going to send you this little manual. Simply tells you if the standby light comes on with no flow, then we got to check the flow. But if we have a problem, detect it light on, it will be related to one of these lights from minimum to maximum. For example, the first one, problem detected on with minimum light on. That means that we are low in salt. And then number 2 will be high in salt. And then we'll have a number 3 saying that we have a problem with input power. Number 4, a problem with the temperature sensor. And number 5, 6, 7, and 9, some kind of an internal error. and those are the possible actions. All we got to do is just follow them, and then at last we'll have the number 8 and the 10. 8 means that there's no current to the cell. Most likely the plug is not plugged correctly, and we need to fix that part. Or number 10 means that the chlorinator cell could be bad and needs to be replaced. So very simple diagnostics to follow. And almost at the end, maintenance. What do we do with the cell when it's calcified or scaled? We need to clean it. And if it's not dirty, please don't clean it. We don't want to keep our cells inside of muriatic acid if it's not needed. So what do we do in order to clean it? Simply we turn off the breaker or turn off the pump, remove the cell from the plumbing, unplug it, and then inspect it. If it's dirty with leaves or something like that, just use a hose and spray gun, and then just rinse it out. Do not use pressure wash machines. Too much pressure, it's going to affect our chlorinator plates. If it does have calcium buildup, then we have to use some kind of a mixture between water and muriatic acid to clean it. All we got to do is either use the base or just a bucket and submerge the cell for about 20 minutes, maximum 1 hour. Don't leave it overnight. Don't leave it there the whole afternoon. Muriatic acid will destroy anything that is metal after time. So in this case, again, no more than 20 minutes, or maximum, if it's very calcified, 1 hour. If you're going to clean one of the cells for the AquaRite 100, we need to keep in mind that we cannot submerge the entire cell inside. Just make sure, as you can see here on the right side, to put it inside at the maximum that you see here, the blue area. So just enough to cover the plates, since we don't want the electrical connection on top to be submerged in acid. So keep that in mind for this kind of a chlorinator. And then after that, you got to follow the codes how to get rid of the acid you use. Most likely you're going to have to stabilize it or bring the pH up until it reaches 7.0, and then you can get rid of it. Now, almost at the end, please, if you have any questions, there's a little section on this app, so we can add any questions that you have. And almost at the end, when I finish with this, I will be answering your questions. Now, let's talk about commercial products. In commercial products, we have 2 chlorinators. We call them Saline 6.0 or Saline 11.0. Now, what is the difference between these two? Well, first of all, the 6.0, that's going to produce about 6 pounds of chlorine in a matter of 24 hours. That means that it will produce 4 times more than any one of our chlorinators that goes up to 40,000 gallons. Since this is commercial, we recommend this for pools up to 65,000 gallons on the exterior, if they're outside in the open, or 95,000 gallons if they are inside a room. Metal box, 120 volt connection only, so also keep that in mind, please. And here you can see that it has a chlorinator cell plus the power center, flow switch, and produces 4 more times chlorine. I told you that than any one of our AquaRites, the biggest one, which is for 40,000 gallon pool. Easy to control. A screen, 1 button only. The button allows you to go up and down with the production rate or simply reset the system. There's not much things to do here. Very simple. And then if we do a plumbing, we recommend that if your pump is either 2 horsepower or 2.5 or bigger, definitely put a bypass, as you can see on the bottom. Highly recommend that. This chlorinator cell also has 4 holes or 4 spots, so we can drill holes and anchor this chlorinator cell so it has no movement. Minimum flow 40 gallons per minute, maximum 125 gallons per minute. And if we talk about the Saline 11.0, this chlorinator will produce double of what the 6.0 produces. Metal box also, pretty much everything's the same. Big difference between the cells. This one is a lot bigger. It uses 4-inch plumbing, maximum flow of 250 gallons per minute. The 6.0 uses 2-inch plumbing. So this is great for commercial. So if you don't want to have a lot of AquaRite conventional ones in line, then we can use just one of these big ones, and this will do the job 4 times or 8 times faster than a regular AquaRite for 40,000 gallons per minute. Here you can see a nice installation with several Saline 6.0s. Very clean. As you can see, all of them are installed in parallel, and that's very important. Here in the bottom, you can see an installation with 2 of them. In this case, we have a UV system and we have a chlorinator cell. But also, my point here is that they are installed in parallel. That will give us the equal amount of flow to each one of the units. That will be less pressure and also less TDH, or total dynamic head, or back pressure for our pump. So that will help our system. And almost at the end, we have here this new UV system. This is a UV system that comes to kill 99% of all the microorganisms. If we want to use this system with chlorination, that will be great because it will reduce the amount of chlorine that we use by 50%. As you can see here, it's got 4 inlets on the bottom, 4 outlets on top, and it comes up to 3 bulbs, 3 UV bulbs. These UV bulbs are rated for 40 gallons per minute or 152 liters per minute. So every single one of those bulbs is good for that amount of water flowing through the system. If we put 2, then we have enough UV for 80 gallons per minute of flow, or 320. Life expectancy of the bulbs are up to 13,000 working hours. And again, this system will be great to reduce the amount of chlorine. You got to remember that these systems will kill anything that goes through them, any germs, anything that goes through those bulbs, it will kill it. Now, this is not going to be a replacement for chlorinator or even for just regular chlorine, because we still have to have some kind of chlorine in the pool, some kind of residual that will be killing the bacteria when this water is not flowing through this UV system. 4 inlets, you can plumb this whichever way you want, or we got to recommend that that the water flows from the bottom to the top, so the outlets will be in the top, the inlets on the bottom. But either you can go one way, or you can come through the other side and then go the other way. On the front here, where you see outlet and where you see inlet, you can also use these openings, or in the back it's got 2 more. So if you are against a corner, you don't have to come in from one side and go the other way. Simply come in from the bottom and then exit on the same side on the top. So it'll make it a lot easier for you. It comes with caps. So if you don't use any of the rest of them, you can cap them. You can glue it. And then also, I mean, if you need more flow, since these are 2-inch connections, you can use 2 of them to come in, and then 2 of them to go out. That way you can increase the flow going through the system. When we talk about 3 bulbs and we talk about going up to 120 gallons per minute. So 2-inch piping, 40 gallons per minute per each one of these bulbs. And then also we have this new ozone purifier. This system will reduce your chlorine level up to 60%. Okay, so it works great for pools up to 55 gallons. So you have this option also of ozone. And then the best thing of all, you can actually put them together. And if you do that, we will reduce our chlorine level up to or down to 80%. So that means if we spend, for example, 10 gallons of chlorine a month, now we're going to be using only about 2 gallons of chlorine a month. These systems come with a really good price, very easy connection. As you can see here, we recommend the ozone to be connected before the pump, and then the UV at the end of the system, even after or before the chlorinator, if we do have a chlorinator cell for chlorine or salt chlorine. Very easy to install, very safe, and to have a perfect water in the pool, this will be probably the most recommended thing, so we highly recommend it. To summarize, we have, like I said, we have several systems of chlorine generators. We also have the AQR-PRO that can control a pump to monitor our pH or inject simply muriatic acid. We have our UV system, and we also have an ozone system or a combination of both, plus the Chlorinator commercial products. So we have a complete line with this. And to finalize, I want to tell you that today, April 2nd, we spoke about this sanitation. We will have more trainings next week and the week after that, which we'll be posting soon. But for next week, we have automation. We'll talk about OmniHub and OmniLogic on Wednesday. This will be Tuesday and Wednesday, April 7, April 8. And then April 9, we'll talk about automatic cleaners, suction, and robotics. So keep in touch, watch your emails, register for each one of these independently since they are all separate. Any questions? Please write them down on the question section. And just to let you know, we have here our contact emails. Roberto Sablon, Regional Sales Manager for the Caribbean and Latin America. We also have Rafael Acosta for South America, Sales Manager. And myself, Manny Exlawak, for any technical questions for the Caribbean and Latin America. Any questions? This is the time. I don't see any so far. So at this point, I want to say thank you very much. We hope to see you next week. And if you have any questions that pop up later, just send us an email and we'll be happy to answer those questions. So thank you very much. And you have a great day. Keep safe. And we will see or talk soon. Thank you.